Hey everyone, welcome to part 2 of the video that I did. It's on the YouTube channel called 10 Beliefs That I Needed to Change. In that video, and you will want to watch that before watching this video because that precedes this, and that is a video talking about 10 different belief systems that I needed to break down, how I broke them down through acceptance, philosophy, unconditional self-life, and other acceptance, where this video will be more about the exposures and the behaviors that were related to those exact fears. So I have that same piece of paper here. I'm just going to go through them from a behavioral standpoint, what exposures were necessary, why certain exposures were not necessary, and we're going to keep this all about behaviors. The reason why it's so important to cover the behaviors, as I was saying to someone on the one this morning, and something I talk about quite frequently, is this. The behaviors you perform instill your beliefs and your feelings and vice versa. I always use the example of, let's say you're walking on the street with your spouse and someone pushes you and you turn around and you shove them back. In that moment, in that microsecond, you didn't think a belief system, but you did instill one by pushing them. And the belief system that you instilled was, I can't stand it, I must show you, you're worthless, you're an idiot, your identity is worthless, and that's what happens. Behaviors are more than likely the hardest things to change, in my opinion, in many ways, not always, but changing your behaviors is where a lot of real action goes against procrastination, which we all will fall into from time to time. So again, watch part 1 of this video. It's called 10 Beliefs I Had to Change, and this is part 2. And if you're interested in our coaching or webinar services, please email info@ocdrecovery.com and we'll get back to you in a timely fashion. So the first belief is, I must sleep well. So they're getting comfortable. The exposure is getting comfortable with the sensation of not sleeping well. Now, when it comes to other types of exposures you can watch documentaries on people who went through sleep deprivation, people who have come out the other side of insomnia. I highly recommend going to the person we work with, the holistic sleep coach. Her name is Beth. That's her Instagram, the.holistic.sleep.coach, dots between all the words, and watching her journey with extreme insomnia, breaking down why wearing the feeling of being tired and uncomfortable was so important. And that will be very, very key. Now, a lot of these fears, the sensation of discomfort, whether it's procrastination discomfort, anger discomfort, depression discomfort, the actual feeling that comes along with these words. Words are meaningless without context. This could be called a tree, but we call it a pen. These are all assigned contexts that we give them as humans, culturally over time handed down. If you really look at some of these things philosophically, you can get really, really deep when you break down that there really isn't no universal principle to many things besides what we assign it. And sleep is one of those. Again, watching the documentaries can be key, but the biggest exposure is just feeling feeling the fear of being tired, so feeling exhausted. And another thing too about sleep is you don't have to set your alarm to sleep 4 hours a day. This becomes compulsive. Another exposure is a lot of people will get out of bed when they're tired. Allow yourself to sit there. If you stay up all night, you stay up all night. If you sleep, you sleep. If you don't, you don't. That's key for that. The second thing is, I must perform well at work. The exposure for this is taking the risk of feeling uncomfortable whilst going to work with the reality that you might make a mistake. This is really important to cover. You don't have to make mistakes purposefully, but you can do little things like knock over like a paperclip dispenser at work, or like drop something that's not going to cause any harm or spill anything hot in front of a coworker. You could set yourself up with these mini exposures, or like put some toilet paper in the bottom of your shoe and then walk out the feel of shame and embarrassment and feeling those things. You don't have to make major mistakes. You don't have to purposely fuck up a project, a multi-million-dollar project, but little tiny things where no one's at harm, you're not at harm, no large amount of monetary crisis will go down, and you can actually look at that in that perspective. That's really, really key. The third one is, others must respect me. Now, again, a lot of these are primarily belief-based and there's not a direct exposure, but an exposure for why we don't need respect in the way that we think we do. I just want you to watch prison documentaries. That's what I did for myself. Watch how many gang members are in prison for the rest of their lives and or on death row or in and out offenders based off of a belief system that they have to prove their worth to other people. And then you can break that down philosophically, going back to the first video where I just talked about acceptance. But when you get into a disagreement, which you will, humans are constantly disagreeing with each other on major topics such as politics, religion, money, any type of big view that people get emotionally attached to. Going into those conversations with an open mind, realizing that you don't need to be right and you don't need to be heard. Maybe they know something that you don't, and just feeling that discomfort. That's the exposure for that one. Number 4, you must listen to me. Again, this is primarily philosophical and acceptance-based, but the exposure you can do for this is when you feel triggered, you feel those emotions rising up, the thermostat is turning on. What you want to do is allow yourself to feel those emotions. You don't need to get that off your chest. You could sit with that. So the feeling of discomfort is the actual exposure and not needing to type back. You don't have to have the last say. This was a big one for me. I absolutely believed that I had to get the last word in, but I didn't need to get the last word in. All I needed to do was listen to someone and maybe take constructive criticism a little bit better, because constructive criticism can be something that's very beneficial for many people. And that really was a huge learning part of my journey, and that was really, really important. Number 5, I must have a plan. I must know that I'll recover. The exposure for this is not compulsively needing a plan to where you're writing it out. So if you're journaling all day long, cut the journaling. I've had many compulsive behaviors when it comes to journaling. I've compulsively disputed on paper. Many people don't even dispute on paper, but then you get people like myself every once in a while that will do pages and pages and pages multiple times a day, which is not good either because you're forcing it. So the exposure for this is, again, feeling the confusion and going with it. A lot of these exposures are actually feeling a sensation of confusion or anger and not allowing yourself to act up on that. And if I'm a little bit fidgety right now, I hurt myself 2 days ago, so sitting for long periods of time hurts. That's why I'm a little bit more fidgety than normal. If you see me kind of going like that, I make a weird face. Good life acceptance. I actually, 2 days ago, it was so bad, I could not put my clothes on myself. Erica had to put my underwear, my pants, and my socks on. So, and that lasted for about 48 hours. The swelling was so bad. Yeah. Unconditional life acceptance, realizing that things just happen. Super key. Number 6, this is where a lot of actual exposures can be targeted. I must look amazing. Purposely taking social media pictures one time and posting it, or having someone else take the photo, you don't even get to look at it and they make the post for you. Not like a crass one, but you don't get to retake photos over and over again. Maybe going out with your makeup looking silly if you're a girl, wearing certain clothes that you would normally not wear, all that as well. You have to plug and chug here. Think about things that you avoid. Looking a certain way, clothes a certain way, tightness of clothes, making you look fat, making your rolls hang over, all sorts of stuff like that. Designing those things particularly to get in there. The physical appearance fears, there are some really good targeted exposures that you can do, and you can make those up for yourself. So really think of the things you're afraid of. I wore really tight clothes to make like certain areas of my stomach kind of like hang over. I wore that to the gym, super uncomfortable. Once I realized it wasn't the end of the world, and even if people made fun of me, it wasn't that bad. And even if I didn't look a certain way, it's not the end of the world. Not preferable for me because I do like the way I look and I do care about physical appearances, but they're not going to last forever. I will get old one day. I will look bad like the rest of us. Nobody looks good at 90 years old from a perspective of sexual attraction, and primarily in that way. Obviously, there's people that are into all sorts of different stuff, but I'm just using that for an example. Number 7, I must live forever and stay safe. Lots of great documentaries for this one. Looking at people whose lives were cut short, pediatric oncology, cancer of children, different Auschwitz documentaries, different genocide documentaries, tyranny, wars, Genghis Khan, famine, civil war, anything you can imagine, Rome famine, the Britannic tribes, like anything you can imagine to really look at it from a gratitude perspective. Documentaries can have their place. By the way, I'm going to say this now. These exposures will only get you so far. Yes, exposures will help change beliefs, but if the underlying worst case scenario isn't worked on, this will only do you so good. These are very important. A lot of these exposures are very important. They're just not the entire piece of the puzzle. The puzzle comes together. It's a pie, and inside the pie, it's like, let's say it's like a chicken pot pie, and like you have the unconditional self-life, other acceptance, you have the exposures, you have the uncertainty, you have the time and patience, you have the discipline, you have the confusion. These are all just pieces of their recovery journey. Number 8 is I must have money. Exposures can go 2 ways. Some people will never look at their bank account at all. They don't want to look at their finances or have financial meetings. You have to do the things that you're avoiding. No amount of avoidance is going to let you go off OCD. Think about it in a funny way. Have you ever met this person? I avoided my way to OCD recovery. You never met that person. I never met that person. That person doesn't exist. They might not be suffering emotionally at the time because they have so many avoidance behaviors, but they're certainly not recovered. No one has said the words, I reassured and avoided my way to freedom. So when it comes to money, looking at documentaries of people went broke, maybe going talking to some homeless people. This is something that Rob talked about. Where I live, there's a lot of homeless people in certain parts of town here in Colorado. And when I look at them, I think about them. I go, I wonder what, they went through in life. I wonder if this is chosen. Some of them choose it. Some of them went through hardships. Some of them came through bad families. A lot of them probably don't have physical symptoms of anxiety, but probably a lot do. And then looking at it in that perspective can be really important. Number 9 goes directly into everything we talked about. Life should be fair. All you have to do, again, is watch documentaries, gratitude, read books. Man's Search for Meaning is probably the best exposure for that. Read that book, let it simmer and think about it. Just think about this story he told when he got to Auschwitz and the SS guard pushed him to, I believe, the right, which only 10% of people went. And he went into the first barracks and he said to people, hey, where's my family? And the guy went over to the little crack in the window and he said, you see the smoke right there? That's your family. Imagine that. He was like, what do you mean? Matt, what are you talking about? There's no internet back then. There's no cell phones and selfies and updated Instagram posts or reels. They had no idea what they were in store for. He never saw his family again. They were murdered and gassed to death and then burned right there. So life just isn't fair. This is only 80 years ago. We're not talking mass amounts of time ago. We're talking about in less than 100 years, which is a pinprick in the grand scheme of human existence. I really do like looking. Many people know I have a couple friends who are disabled, one who I actually see this Wednesday. I go to his house for an hour and a half every other Wednesday. We have really good conversations about finance, about the economy, about social issues and stuff. And seeing him talk and communicate with me and conversate while he can't even move, it's really, he's an amazing person to be around in many different ways. And then number 10 is light. I must feel good in order to have XYZ. Again, watching documentaries on people who are going through hardships in life. When you're doing your exposures, I want you to think about the things you're avoiding. I want you to think about the things where you could target in there. I've heard a lot of people say that exposures, that the content of the fear doesn't matter. If the content of the fear didn't matter, the exposure would not be specific to the fear. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. It's pretty easy to break down. Obviously, the context of the fear, not the thoughts or the images or the sensation or the urge. The context of the fear of being stuck forever, fear, the fear of societal and family rejection, harm OCD, POCD, real event, false memory, fear of cheating, moral fears, religious OCD as well, existential solipsism, the fear of death, the fear of eternal suffering, ROCD, the fear of not feeling in love. Those particular fears, you can pinprick and choose certain exposures to get in there. Thank you so much for watching this video. Remember, if exposures were all we needed, we would expose ourselves to freedom. They're very important, but not the whole case. If you're interested in our coaching and webinar services, please email info@ocdrecovery.com. They're very, very detailed. I don't have one with me right here. I will show one, actually. Let me take the name off the top of this one to show you. This is the one I did this morning when it comes to a sound-based fear. So when someone comes in and I do coaching with them, oh boy. When I do coaching with them, this is how I write a lot of my stuff. So if you see right here, this person has a sound-related fear. When they watch this, they'll know who they are. Buddy, I took your name off the top. His beliefs were, I can't stand the sounds. These sounds are horrible if they last forever. And I talked about, for him, it was a particular where this would matter a lot, where I go into showing that the avoidance and the compulsions are not letting him off the hook. He understood conceptually about how the fear didn't make a lot of sense rationally, but his brain wouldn't believe it because he still was engaging in behavior. So everything is intertwined, the beliefs and the behaviors. Thank you so much again. Enjoy and have a great day.